Hello, my name's James Mather. Welcome to this video, which is part of a series on some non-standard solutions to problems inherent in the Big Healey. Well, the Big Healey isn't so big in certain respects. It has very narrow floors and cramped footwells. And I have been trying to work out a solution that will make my Healey a pleasant car for fun drives in the country. That's the top and bottom of it, really. I'm not going to do track days. The car is already non-standard. It has an American V8 engine in it. And I want a brisk machine which will be fun for my wife and myself, and crucially our dog, to have days out. So I'm working away at this non-standard 106 from 1957. And this video, which is part one, there'll be a part two to follow on the upholstery of the back seat. But this video is about the bones of the back seat arrangement. And I'm sure that the designers of the BN4 and the BT7 had the best intentions about making a car that was viable for a family with a couple of small kids. I don't know whether they succeeded. They had a good try. But my needs are a bit different, and I'm no spring chicken. I want a car that I can sit in comfortably for a long period, and I want somewhere to put my stuff. And that stuff includes a Border Terrier. So here goes. We're going to look first at what the back seat is founded upon. That's the bits of metal and wood, and getting them in order. And then we're going to consider the possibilities for storage, somewhere to put your jacket when you're not wearing it, somewhere to put your maps that keeps them from flying away, those various things. And then in part two, we're going to look at the finishes of the back seat and what will both be practical and also look good. So here we are in a situation where all the upholstery has been removed, and what we have left is the two steel seat pans and the backrest, which is a bit of carpentry. Now the two steel pans are removable, and beneath them are the brake arrangements and the handbrake system, and the SU fuel pump, which is over on the left-hand side. I remember when I had my BN1, I used to have to get at the fuel pump every now and again when the car had been standing and give it a tap in order to wake it up. But I think maybe the fuel pump was in a slightly different place, because I always did so via the wheel arch. Now, in this case, one could easily reposition the fuel pump so that that was possible. So the question I pose at this stage is, are these two, I call them commodes, I think they look absolutely awful, these two lids here, are they capable of becoming hinged compartments with hinged or otherwise removable lids? And now to move on to the backrest. This is mine. I've just remade it using almost all the original materials, except for the ply panel that faces forward. and I will show you details of that a little later on. It is supremely badly made. As a piece of carpentry, it scores so many black points, black marks, that it should have a dunce's cap awarded, or whoever devised it should. The materials used are not suitable. The ply was not made with a waterproof glue. So in the case of my car, it had delaminated and begun to dissolve into shards. And the hardwood frame, which I will show you later on, is badly jointed and structurally weak. Anyway, I've done something about all that, and we'll come to that. But what we have is this backrest, which is nicely curved athwartships and has a thing like a sort of miniature parcel shelf between it and the cockpit coaming. I think this will do, for my purposes at least. That is to say, the accommodation of a dog and a sort of large shelf for you to put a coat, which you're not wearing, and maybe some maps, in such a way that they are within reach but secure. A few words on the rear seat backrest. This is mine. It was in very poor condition because it was really held together by the upholstery. And when I took this off, it disintegrated. And this was because it was assembled using steel screws, which had corroded and wasted and lost most of their heads. And the frame was not properly jointed, really, and no glue was used. So I'm going to show you the ply which formed the diaphragm, that is the front-facing part of the backrest that you see here. There is the original backrest, which I took off. So I made a new one out of water and boil proof. That's WBP ply. It's a step down from marine ply, but should do the job. And everything else is reused. So this thing here, which I call the parcel shelf, that's reused. And then there is the frame, all of which is reused. But I have inserted these corner blocks, like this, which are made out of a bit of scrap oak, which are intended to overcome some of the weaknesses of the design. I'm about to rub it down and prime it. And priming really falls into the tuning and modification category, and because nothing was primed, nothing made of wood in the Austin-Healeys, it's a partly wooden car, nothing was ever primed. And this is really very foolish, because the wooden bits are never on show, and the priming reduces the effects of the air, damp air, and possibly rain, which are corrosion and deterioration of the wood itself. Just a word about the priming process and about dismantling the backrest. Firstly, dismantling the backrest. If you do what I did and take the whole thing apart into its constituent parts, you'll find you have a great many screws with no screwdriver slot left to remove, and also hundreds of staples. The staples are pretty easy. To get the screws out, I used a Dremel, here we are, with a cutting disc like that. And this enabled me to cut screwdriver slots in the remains of the head. That sounds more difficult than it actually is. It's just a slow job needing patient work, and you had to be sure not to go too far, otherwise the head of the screw fell apart and you had a slot in your wood. Secondly, priming. I'm about to prime this whole thing now. I shall take some care in painting the back of the backrest, the reverse face, because that will not be covered. The front will, of course, be covered, and I'll talk separately about that. I think any old primer will do. Anything is better than nothing, but I have some yacht primer left from my sailing days, and that's terrifically heavy-duty stuff, and it has to be to withstand the marine environment. So that's what I'm using. It's a good use for it, as I already have it. But you might just want to use a cheap water-based primer. The choice is yours. I don't think it matters all that much. The timber backrest has now been primed and it's ironmongery fitted. I'll just show you how that goes. Down here we have a clip and a sort of peg that engages in a channel screwed to the rear wheel arch. So you slide it in. There's nothing to stop it sliding out though, except for the friction of the clip, and I may devise some form of positive lock that means it stays in place and doesn't jiggle around and make noises when you go over a bump. It's now time to think about how this will be covered, and the top here I'm going to do with a piece of blue leather which is left over from the manufacture of the front seats. So that will be a good way of using that up. But it has to stop against something because the front of the backrest will be carpeted. And I've got here a bit of mahogany moulding, and my intention is to screw that in place, pad the top here, and then bring the vinyl, or leather actually, leather over the top, over the moulding, fix it down here, and then carpet beneath it. And what's behind this idea is the detail round the top of the cockpit, and you will remember that on the sides and the back of the cockpit there is a polished aluminium moulding. At the front it's slightly different, so here is the dashboard which I have been working on, and here is the corresponding aluminium moulding. And at the front you cover that with vinyl which extends up to the base of the windscreen, and the idea of that is to eliminate glare that would otherwise affect the driver, glare coming off polished aluminium. So this is quite a similar section to the bit of mahogany that I just showed you. So we're going to replicate in principle the moulding here covered in blue vinyl in this case, and on the seat backrest we've got a similar shape covered in, as it happens, blue leather, but it's the same colour, and then carpet beneath. Now I'm still working on the detail for the seat base, and it's not straightforward, so I need more time, and I will address that further in episode 2 or part 2 of this video.